the odds seem super high that the city of Chicago is going to get shut down because let's go Brandon Johnson and the city council can't seem to work out how exactly they're going to make up for the $1.2 billion deficit. So let's just shut the city down, see how that works out. Yeah, let's get into it. Here we go. First article reads, Chicago lost its mind financially under Mayor Brandon Johnson, Washington Post warns. When the Washington Post warns, leadership is a little, that's when you know, okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, Chicago has been, they've just been doing everything wrong. Everything has been done wrong. Leadership, everything has been done wrong. And now you're having to pay the Pied Piper. You had all kinds of money come through during the pandemic, right? And so Chicago and a lot of other cities with Democrat leadership spent all kinds of money, trillions and trillions of dollars collectively on all these programs. And now they're not willing to do some cuts. So what's going on? We can't work out how to make the budget. Yeah, how we make the budget solve it, right? I mean, not a massive deficit, not a massive deficit. Washington Post criticizes Chicago's financial gimmicks under Johnson. So you got this wild kind of back and forth. Let's hear a little bit from Let's Go Brandon Johnson. Look at the headline. Chicago mayor, wicked people want chaos. And he also blames Trump on all this. Oh, this is Trump's fault. Yeah, his tariffs are...
I tried to use some of the time that I had to look through it. What I did see was still nearly the doubling of garbage collection fees. I don't support a budget that places such an incredible burden on working people at a time in which President Trump...
This is a guy who's raised taxes on West Garfield neighborhoods and North Lawndale in the west and south sides of Chicago. Under his leadership, they've gone up over 100%. Just about 100%, like 133%. Property taxes have gone up that much in those specific neighborhoods. And he's concerned about a little bit of a garbage increase. Granted, nobody wants any kind of increase, but Let's Go Brandon Johnson is literally, he's not on solid ground here. Listen to him talk about Trump.
Has made life quite difficult for working people across this country. The city of Chicago should not be adding to that burden. And so, no, I cannot support a budget that nearly doubles the garbage fee for working people. I'm going to do everything that I can to avoid the chaos that, quite frankly...
Why'd they switch out the signer? And why do we have a signer? How about just use closed captioning, right? I mean, what am I missing here? Why is Let's Go Brandon Johnson got a signer? Just more taxpayers' dollars, right? I'm sure this lady isn't volunteer.
There's some... There are some individuals that want chaos to occur.
It's my understanding that there is a renegade group of city council people who actually want to balance the budget. Wow, that is chaos. That is some real chaos there. A balanced budget. Huh. Weird. What are you talking about? Let's Go Brandon Johnson. It makes no sense, right? Wicked people want chaos. From what I can understand, that is simply not true. The whole thing is just like, what? No wonder you're going to go into a shutdown.
Because those interests benefit from chaos. And they will pit communities against one another to fulfill their political goal. I'm going to do everything in my power to avoid that type of chaos because nobody benefits from that except
you're creating a city shutdown, you numbnut. I mean, I'm sitting here all the way in Seattle, Washington, right? Bellevue to be exact. Do we have problems? Yes. Do we have this kind of problem? No.
The handful of people who have become accustomed to controlling and dominating government.
We're going to get you out that seat. But before we pledgefully vote you out, I'd rather see you in an orange jumpsuit. I'd rather see you locked up because you doing the most heinous crime. And Trump, get DOJ and get this man out of office.
We know what it's like right now when my property taxes right now bill came out. And we're trying to figure out how we're going to stay in our homes, senior citizens that's on the fixed income, trying to figure out how they're going to pay these high property taxes. Me trying to figure it out. So, yeah, we know what it's like. But we know you don't know what it's like. You and your administration.
Chicago flips red. They are a very, very vocal group. And I like what they're doing. Businesses brace as Chicago shutdown risks grow ahead of deadline. So there's a high probability, unless they can get their act together by the end of the year. And you've got meetings happening just about every day the next few days. But the odds, and then you got Christmas. You got Christmas in there, December 24th, 25th as Christmas falls. So you're not going to have, and they're not doing meetings on the weekends, I don't think. So the odds of them coming together to close a $1.2 billion deficit are not high. And so much of what Let's Go Brandon Johnson is, he wants to do a head tax, which just basically pushes out business. He started off with companies with over 100 employees, taxing them $21 per month. And then now he's upped that to $33 per month. But, it's only going to impact businesses with, I think, 500 employees. But the math doesn't math. You're not getting to where you're balancing the budget. It makes no sense. So you got the $1 billion gap. Shutdown could halt most city services, about 30,000 city employees unpaid, stall permit and inspection dependent businesses like Windy City Garage. This was a story, and they just basically said, hey, we build garages, and if we can't pull a permit, we got nothing. We're just basically stalled out. And so employees can't get paid, owner can't get paid, and then that goes on down the line, right? I think Chicago will pull it out in the end. I don't think they'll need to go to like an emergency where they pay, first responders, cops and fire department and do bare bones services like that. I don't think that will happen. But again, this is Chicago. Anything could happen. Rival Chicago budget proposal eliminates the garbage fee hike. That was one of their compromises, as agreement is out of sight. Now, the group that's kind of leading this alternate plan to Let's Go Brandon Johnson's plan, they met with Let's Go Brandon Johnson yesterday, and then they were supposed to come back and talk to him, and they just left. Because they're like, we didn't want to stick around and listen to Let's Go Brandon Johnson just berate us on how our plan wouldn't work. So F that guy, we're moving on. And that's what they've done. So they came back and they eliminated the garbage fee hike. The garbage fee hike, it closes, it would have generated $35 million. Okay. All right. And it would have gone from like $8 to, I think, $15 a month. All right. So a little bit, but, relative to the taxes, and those of you in Chicago watching this, relative to your taxes, that's nothing. That is absolutely nothing. Nothing. So they had this meeting. There was not one proposal or idea that was put on the table for us to discuss. See, you got a lot of this back and forth, one side blaming the other. And a lot of folks are just saying Mayor Brandon Johnson's game of budgetary chicken puts Chicago's future at risk. So you've got a massive budget deficit. You've got Let's Go Brandon Johnson kind of on the hot seat because this is happening on his watch. Chicago has never had a citywide shutdown. You've got taxes absolutely going to the moon, You've got businesses leaving. Businesses have been leaving in droves, over 10,000, right? And so what you've got happening, and this is literally what the Chicago assessor said when they're having to explain to all the constituents bringing in their tax bills, saying, pretend this is a tax bill, saying, hey, well, what's up with this? Why did my taxes go through the roof? The assessor basically said, well, we don't have as many businesses in downtown, and as a result, the downtown revenue from the big office buildings is really lacking. So you're going to need to make up the difference. They basically, shuffled the burden, spread the burden onto the taxpayers, the individual homeowner taxpayers, because those values didn't drop nearly as much as all the downtown core, because we had that whole work from home. And then everybody, because of taxation, just like what's happened in Portland, just like what's happening in Seattle, when you tax the absolute F out of businesses and then also layer on proposed taxes, like let's go Brandon Johnson's $33 a head tax, I think is what he's talking about. Businesses say, no, we're not dealing with that. We're moving out of the city. So you're losing all that revenue from the downtown core. Your property values are dropping and somebody's got to pay, right? Because let's go Brandon Johnson. He can't cut services to the point where it's actually making, a difference. So if nothing else, this budget season is exposed as fiction the mayor's repeated claim of being more collaborative than his predecessors when it comes to relations with the city council. In the past, Johnson's collaboration, such as it's been, has been born of necessity as much as anything, a consequence of a divisive brand of politics that has sapped aldermanic confidence in his leadership. They don't have any confidence in him. The individuals in his constituency, in Chicago in general, don't have any confidence in him because he's doing some harebrained things that don't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And so let's go Brandon Johnson. He's literally coming out and saying, hey, let's get this squared away, guys. Gonna have a little bit of a shutdown. He warned about a week ago, Chicago's headed for its first ever government shutdown after a marathon weekend meeting, okay, they are meeting on the weekends, failed to break the budget deadlock gripping the city. You're going to have to do some big cuts, and you're not going to be able to raise any more taxes because people in Chicago basically said, no, we're not doing that. But then you've got this whole thing sweeping the United States. You've got this progressive taxes, right? Socialists are lobbing in progressive taxes. We need more progressive revenue, meaning you're taxing big business. So then big business leaves, more big business leaves from your downtown core. More of the tax burden needs to be spread out upon the constituents. That's how this game is played. There are no in-betweens. You can't squeeze money that isn't there. You need to encourage businesses to be coming into your state, into your city. It's like I've said 100 times. State of Texas right now has a $24 billion to $27 billion surplus. They have a surplus. Individual cities are not meeting to go over these massive budget deficits. They're just not. They're well run. They don't overspend. They don't have these crazy social programs. They didn't commit to being sanctuary cities. How many billions of dollars has Chicago spent on that? About $2.5 billion? Something like that? $2.5 billion. I mean, it's absolute insanity. Some just absolute crazy number will be the cumulative effect of what they've spent. And Chicago, you as taxpayers, you're footing that bill. Did you sign up for that? Did you say, you know what? I would love to support my local criminal illegal. Let's keep them here. Let's give them free health care. I don't get any. Let's give them free food. Oh, yeah. Free housing. Oh, who doesn't want that? Let's give them free licenses for professional services because, it could go wrong there. And you get some, guy driving a semi in flip-flops and crashing into people. That is literally, stories that are out there. This is the look that I often see from Brandon Johnson. And I just kind of think, man, I don't know if anybody's home here. I don't know if this is registering that anybody is home. Are you there? Because his responses to reality don't really match up. You've got this detached from reality. And I think the aldermen and women that are opposing kind of his game plan, I think they're on the right side of this. They're coming to the table with some options, and let's go Brandon Johnson. Chicago City Council rejected Mayor Brandon Johnson's economically harmful tax proposals, but a report offers $1 billion in solutions. So you've got this back and forth. And Chicago, the older people are saying, hey, we can do it with some cuts and with this. And let's go Brandon Johnson is saying, absolutely not. And he's wanting to tax big business because that is what Democrats do when they don't want to cut a budget and they want to squeeze more money. They go after that big business. But unfortunately, that has the unintended, I don't want to say unintended is the word, because that is the reality. We see this time and time and time again. What happens when you tax big business? They leave the city. Who would have thought? They have options. Amazon is the prime example of that. I know there's many, many, many other examples, but you've got a test case study there where socialists, Kshamas Sawant, tax Amazon, greatest concept ever. And then Amazon just starts by the thousands sending their employees over here to Bellevue so they don't have to pay those taxes. It's not that hard to figure out. In this case, what you're talking about is Chicago is the mothership for Illinois, right? Just it. Biggest city. It's got the most going for it. It's the most well-known. When you are taking jobs and companies and pushing them out of Chicago, you're basically pushing them out of Illinois in general. So, there's that. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's administration paid over $3 million to consulting giant to find ways to fix Chicago's over $1 billion in budget woes. But when the accountants did so, his administration mostly ignored them, and now there's a budget impasse. Yeah, guys, we can't work it out. We can't figure it out. So you've had, $21 per month employee on businesses over 100, bumped up to 33. And they're going back and forth. And then, let's go Brandon Johnson is basically saying this is Trump's fault. This is, crazy people who are maniacs' fault. It's just that you've literally got the blind leading the blind. Got a whole bunch of, media articles out there. Skyrocketing property taxes spark West Side community meeting. North Lawndale resident Abraham House L. explained that his own tax bills have skyrocketed despite living on a block with roughly 15 vacant lots, which makes the rising assessments feel unjust. 7 years old and hoping to retire, he says all he wants for officials is to make it make sense. I got 2 tax bills over a 48-month period. One of them is for $1,324 for a single installment, and this year the installment is $5,053. I'm at a point in my life when I should be retiring. Why are my property taxes going up? How can the taxes on my block increase when there are nearly 15 vacant lots? All right, let's tackle that one for a second. Let's walk that through. Let's tie everything together here. So you've got businesses exiting because you're taxing the heck out of them in downtown Chicago, right? Illinois is one of the most unfriendly business cities in the United States now, just like Portland, Oregon. And look how that's going for them. So you're pushing businesses out. If you were pulling businesses in and things were going well, you might have some development of some of these lots. Granted, we are talking about some areas that have been economically underserved. How about we go that direction for years and years and years? So you get a bunch of businesses in downtown Chicago. Is that going to necessarily create a bunch of development of these vacant sites? No, it's probably not. But the reason you've got 15 lots and you still have 15 vacant lots, and I'm just throwing that out there as the example given, is that you don't have a bunch of businesses bringing employees in, creating an effect where there's necessity to build. So those 15 vacant lots represent potentially 15 other homes with taxpayers. You don't have them there, and they're not in the taxpayers aren't in the big buildings. Those are all vacant. And the ones that are selling for way less. And so you're losing out on excise tax there. Just all of your tax revenue is being shrunk. And since you are left in your community, in your home, you're the only one left to carry the tax burden. So that's why you've got taxes absolutely shooting through the roof. There's nobody else to pay. And they gotta get that tax burden down. They gotta get that deficit down. And they literally don't have anybody else but you to pay because they've pushed the businesses out. And the city council, I think rightfully, is saying, hey, you put a $33 a month per month on big business, and they're going to say, no, we're going to go somewhere else. We don't need this gig. We don't need Chicago. There are plenty of other cities that don't do this to us. Chicago budget meeting ends abruptly as deadline approaches. We talked about that. After about 30 minutes, several aldermen who opposed the mayor's budget walked away without a deal. Today, a group of at least 11 alders came to the fifth floor with my hope, an expectation that they would actually present me with ideas that I could work with, and they failed to that. They just said, yeah, no, you need to come to the table. You need to negotiate with us, and you're not negotiating with us. Let's go, Brandon Johnson. We're out of here. And they left. All right. Some negotiations going on there, right? So, and here's more of that. Taxpayer, they're frustrated, stressed, and trying to figure out where this money is going to come from. One bill shows that the amount is more than doubled from $1,600 to more than $3,500. His property tax is going up 118%. 118%. Average homeowner is paying $700 more this year because of millions of dollars cut in adjustments for commercial property tax bills this year. Big buildings and hotels downtown, a burden the assessor said was shifted to homeowners because businesses don't necessarily have to have real estate anymore, right? Everybody, companies that work in downtown, they all have their people. They can go home and work on the internet. Everybody else, hey, you got to go to a job. You got to go to a building. You got to go to a location. You got to go somewhere, right, to physically do your job. And so you can't necessarily leave because you're in that community. You've got your house. You're kind of stuck. Whereas the businesses, they have the option of just saying, Illinois, no. One of my other stories today is Fannie Mae, big secondary mortgage market. They provide liquidity to the secondary market. That's a whole nother story. But Fannie Mae is moving from downtown San Francisco, from the financial district, to Alabama, to Birmingham, Alabama, to get away from the woke nonsense and all the taxes and regulations that they have deemed they do not need. They can operate much cheaper. Their employees can actually afford to buy homes. They aren't going to get taxed up to you-know-what. Not going to get taxed like the folks in Chicago. And you folks in Chicago, you are getting taxed so much based on your assessed values. It is, I have harped on that for podcast after podcast after podcast because it's really unfair. But unfortunately, because of this whole notion of going after progressive revenue, your city is basically pushing out businesses. You are making your city unwelcome to businesses locating there. And Chicago used to be one of those cities where everybody just piled in, just like Portland. Similar leadership. Interesting, right? Hey, don't worry about it because what you're going to see out of Seattle is going to make this kind of stuff look tame. Because we've literally got a straight up socialist. It should be epic. The failure of some of the things that we'll see because socialism just doesn't work. And what you're dealing with in Chicago is you're trying to tag the wealthy businesses, the wealthy people, and they have mobility and they can say, you know what? Not Chicago, Birmingham, Alabama. I'm not saying that's happening, but it's happening in San Francisco. When people have options, they are moving because they can, because it makes sense financially, especially when you've got a city that is on the cusp of having basically a shutdown because they can't work out the budget because of leadership that is literally proposing to push even more businesses out. So there's no good solutions here. You're going to have a massive budget deficit. You're going to either have to cut some of the services. You're going to have to put some taxes in place. You're going to have to do something because $1 billion is not an easy task to just, it's not 100 million. You know what I mean? It's not like we can just kind of work out the math and have it do something different. It's a process that I will be super curious to see how this goes down. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell, because I'll be covering this to the bitter end. Because you got to the end of December for Chicago to figure out how it's going to make up this massive deficit. And then the city shuts down. So what's going to happen? Stay tuned. Thanks again for being here. Catch up with you in the next episode. Bye for now.